So it's been less than 48 hours since President Joe Biden has announced that he will not be running for president and that he endorses his vice president, Kamala Harris. And in that short period of time, Kamala Harris has covered a lot of ground. So this is from the BBC. Kamala Harris wins enough support to clinch Democratic nomination. Vice President Kamala Harris has secured the support of a majority of Democratic delegates to become the party's nominee for president. A survey by the Associated Press on Monday evening said she had received the endorsement of more than 1,976 delegates needed to win the nomination in the first round of voting. That means Ms. Harris is on course to be crowned the party's standard bearer and take on Republican Donald Trump in November's presidential election. It becomes official when party delegates hold a roll call vote ahead of next month's Democratic National Convention in Chicago. Delegates are people who are selected to represent their electoral area. Their pledges of support are non-binding until the vote, but unlikely to change. No one has publicly stepped forward to challenge Ms. Harris as President Joe Biden left the race on Sunday. He found himself under mounting pressure from senior members of his party following the stumbling debate performance against Trump. If the total holds between now and when delegates cast their votes, scheduled to take place from the 1st to the 7th of August, Ms. Harris would formally clinch the party's nomination. Survey by Associated Press is an indication of the groundswell of support for Ms. Harris after President Joe Biden had dropped out of the race on Sunday. Since Mr. Biden announced, millions of dollars in donations have poured into her campaign, and leading Democrats have lined up to support her bid as the Democratic nominee. Then in terms of fundraising money, also from the BBC, Harris donations top $100 million after Biden's exit from presidential race. Democrats have poured more than $100 million in donations into Vice President Kamala Harris's presidential bid since President Joe Biden dropped out of the race on Sunday, her campaign says. Tally was boosted by what her team calls a record 24 period of fundraising, $81 million raised. During that time frame, more than 888,000 people donated sums of up to $200 each, according to progressive donations platform ActBlue. Donors who had pulled back their fundraising over concerns about Mr. Biden's age have said they now intend to resume their support for the party. The surge in donations in the 24-hour period after Biden quit the race was the single biggest for online contributions to Democrats since 2020, according to the New York Times. That was when ActBlue raised $73.5 million after the death of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. The new fundraising marks a turn for the Democratic Party, which had seen support erode from major donors after Mr. Biden's poor performance in June's presidential debate against Donald Trump. Grassroots funding from small donors had also diminished, according to Biden's campaign insiders cited in U.S. media. So, I mean, it would be presumptuous if I said, like, oh, there's been a change in the zeitgeist or something, because, I mean, who knows the historical impact of these actions. But if we think about it just from a more localized perspective, it does feel like there's been a change in the spirit of the Democratic Party, if you'll pardon the phrase. I mean, it seems like the party's gotten more momentum. It seems like the party has a greater level of hope now. I mean, you could see from a mile away that Democratic voters were not satisfied with the party and were specifically not satisfied with Joe Biden. And the major amount of support that we're seeing from Kamala Harris, I think, is sort of a reaction, inverse reaction to the antipathy that people were feeling towards Joe Biden. I mean, and I think Kamala Harris does genuinely have a chance. Obviously, you always want to look at who's raising the most money, because that's a pretty firm indicator of who will win the nomination. And this is a significant amount of money in a short period of time. I heard she's raised up to $250 million. Not to mention, she's been endorsed by many people. So, I mean, it is very fascinating to see this, because, the Democratic Party seems to have been sort of dead in the water for a long time. It's not felt very vibrant. It's not felt very. It's not felt very. I'm trying to think of the word here. Just hasn't really felt alive, and it does seem like this Kamala Harris is stepping up to the plate, has made the party more alive. And again, that could very well be what saves it in the end. It could be that this Hail Mary pass of a younger woman who's of both African American and Indian descent was what saves the party, is what gets that party the necessary ground roots support and donor support. I can't forget that, in order to win the White House in November. And it also try to record a video about this as well. It's also thrown the Republican Party into a bit of disarray, because a lot of their rhetoric and talking points was surrounded by bumbling Joe Biden, Sleepy Joe, and all that stuff. And now they have to figure out what attacks to throw against Kamala Harris. So the race has been changed in a major way. And like I said, Kamala Harris, in a very short period of time, has made a lot of progress.